Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of TV Talk brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. We've been off for a little while, so this show is gonna be about getting the rust out, I think. But we've got a good show, I think, in store for you today. We're going to be talking about The Boys, the Amazon Prime series, The Boys, created by Garth Ennis and written for the TV by a sort of friend of mine, Eric Kripke, and certainly the creator of a show that I've been a part of for a long time. And the usual suspects are here with me today: Jax Schumann and Jennifer Bouani, the creators of The Strike, which we hope to be hitting the airwaves sometime within the next 30 years. That would be fantastic if that happens. You know, television works things out very slowly. As you guys know from reading executive producers' struggles with shows and how long shows take to get up. But hopefully, because there is a whale in the picture, things will be going much more quickly. And this will be news that we'll talk about later. Unless you guys want to announce it now. Do you want the cake before the entree, or should we do the entree and then leave any discussion of the strike and the things that are going on with the strike for the dessert?
I say entree.
You want to do the entree now and then save that for the dessert.
Yeah, that's
okay. So the entree, folks. The entree today is The Boys, as I said before, the Amazon Prime series, formerly a graphic novel series that I think stopped somewhere around edition 77. I'm not sure. I just ordered the whole shebang on Amazon today. I love the series so much, it sort of has forced me to read the graphic novel now. I usually do it in the reverse. I find the graphic novel, then find the series, and then compare the two. That's what happened with Preacher. A decidedly different result for me for Preacher. But The Boys, let's talk about The Boys. Created by Eric Kripke, of course, of Supernatural fame. So anybody out there watching, you guys know that for sure. Starring a whole group of very fine actors, I have to say, one of whom my wife trained.
Oh, you didn't tell us this. Which one?
It is. I didn't. I saved that. This is my dessert.
Sneaky.
So there's Anthony Starr, of course, as Homelander. There's Erin Moriarty as Annie, January, or
Starlight.
Starlight. There you go. There's Carl Urban as the inimitable Billy Butcher. Jack Quaid is Huey. And Chance Crawford is who's the Deep. I think that's a fantastic and ironical name for him. As one of the most superficial characters in the whole story. But as the Deep, he was the one that my wife trained for a while. He's darn good, I have to say.
He is very good.
Gossip Girl.
Isn't he good? What's that?
I know him from Gossip Girl. Did she train him for that?
She trained him, yeah, right before that stuff.
Oh, cool.
So he's a Playhouse West alum. Karen Fukuhara, she plays Kimiko, the great Kimiko. I'm saying her name the way Frenchie would. Frenchie.
She is actually one of our comps for a major character on the strike.
Was I not supposed to say that?
Oh, really? Is this part of the dessert? Are we starting the dessert early?
No, I'm just giving I'm showing you the tray, the dessert tray, good. And now we can go back to this. Think about it. Now we can go back to your.
I'll be done with the principals here in a minute. Tomer Capon plays Frenchie. Jesse Usher plays A-Train, and Laz Alonso plays Mother's Milk. I love Laz Alonso. He's pretty fantastic. And there's Elizabeth Shue is in this. There's a whole bunch of really fine actors.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes, he's fantastic, and he's made appearances in Kripke's other TV series, Revolution, of course, and has a great pedigree on the show that we all loved, Breaking Bad, and yeah, it's just a group of great actors. Jim Beaver has made an appearance in it as some government functionary. What is he, the Secretary of State or something like that?
Yeah, I think he's going to have an even bigger role in season 3. Or even more.
I think he has to because the evil Vought organization is trying to merge with the government. But let's talk about like the basic plot line of this story is, well, there's this group of superheroes that are called the Seven, and they are sort of more or less run by an organization called Vought Industries. And Vought sort of controls their PR and image, and these superheroes go around doing what everyone supposes is good things. But of course, there's a dark side to this story. They are not, in fact, doing good things, and Vought largely is an organization geared towards hiding the bad things that these superheroes, quote unquote, do, and pumping their image with the ideal of connecting with the military-industrial complex, where one assumes this industry will then become, this corporation will then become one of the most powerful institutions in the world. Enter some folks with a beef, Billy Butcher and Huey in particular, guys who have been wounded by these superheroes in the past, normal people without superpowers who are taking righteousness into their own hands and trying their best to expose Vought for the dirty little corporation it is, and these superheroes for the scummy, phony celebrities that they are, and risking life and limb in order to do that. Is that a fair assessment of what the basic plot line is, guys?
Yep,
Would you
I
add
think
or
so.
subtract anything from that?
I don't think I would add anything to that. I mean, each of these characters of the boys who are fighting against the superheroes have their own super interesting stories and arcs, and that makes them both empathetic and sometimes hateful. Some of the stuff that Butcher does, is very seems kind of on the surface to be very shitty toward his teammates, but it's all really good conflict. So good summary. I think I wouldn't add anything except for what I just did.
Yeah, Butcher is a man with a purpose, and he's not going to let anybody get in his way. But I think this show has a running commentary on a lot of things in our society that I think need to be commented on. And in some respects, the commentary is just. In some respects, I wonder. It's certainly a commentary on celebrity culture and what celebrity culture means to the celebrity, the sacrifice of integrity that celebrity culture could in fact bring to the celebrity, the distortions with which people view celebrity, how they don't see the real person, and how there's a machine behind celebrity that can, if the celebrity allows it, distort his own perceptions about himself and his own power in the world. What would you guys say to that? That it's one of the strongest commentaries it makes is about celebrity and the intoxication of celebrity and the corruption of celebrity. What would you guys say about that?
Yeah, I thought this was really one of the most interesting comments about it seemed to be that there was this celebrity piece about it, and there was this military complex commentary about it, and patriotism wrapped up with the religious right and the news cycle. And it's all kind of the bad things about America, all into one powerful oligarch group, that's the corporations controlling it. And so yeah, I thought the celebrity piece was really, I'd never seen it done before. This is, by the way, not my genre. The superhero. It's not my typical genre, but I think they did it pretty well. It was definitely a well-told story. I'm curious about you. You are a celebrity, Mark. So, what is your take on it from your perspective? You actually walk this walk. You know what it's like to be behind.
Yeah. First, I just want to address, you're making a broader comment about the commentary it makes about capitalism in general, our society in general, a corporate world, and what that means, I think, to the creators, and the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industries, all of these things become sort of fodder for criticism in this, and overall the concept of religion and patriotism and the marriage of these two in a certain political part of the spectrum all become fodder for criticism of the American way, and how much of the American way is real and how much of it is the result of this sort of propped up phony corporatism and PR. And is the American idea really just empty rhetoric, or is it something else? I actually think the American idea is a lot embodied in the boys themselves and in their resistance against arbitrary authority, and in these power structures that are political and economic unions. They're not purely corporatists. They're not purely corporations. I can't say that this entirely hits the Hollywood trope of big bad corporation, big bad pharmaceutical company. It accidentally carries with it some other just criticisms. But with respect to the celebrity thing, I think they nailed it. They nail it. They absolutely nail it. I know that if you believe your own PR, it's a very, very dangerous thing for you. If you believe only what the fans who like you say about you, it's a very, very dangerous place for you to be. And if you become powerful enough in terms of celebrity in that world, you can tend to be surrounded by people who only say yes to you, and that is also a very, very dangerous thing. And it can lead those who are likely to be led in that direction to become deluded about themselves. I think one of the age-old thematic elements that this story tries to put out there is that power corrupts. I've never really been a fan of that concept. And I think you see in the nature of the characters when you get into their backgrounds that they're already corrupted human beings who happen to be in positions of power. And because they have no one resisting them, their psychopathy can exercise itself.
Well,
right?
and I think a great example of that, it's a very interesting theme, the whole power corrupts, which I have never been. It's the same thing as money is the root of all evil. It's these things, these are inanimate objects, or these are not living things. Power is not a being that is alive, like some kind of demon getting in you and making you do stuff. And one of the more interesting examples of that is Starlight. She has this power from, in the sense of, you want to call it compound V is the power. It's not compound V that is corrupting them. It is the environment that they grew up in, as well as their own psychological tendency toward being corruptible. When you look,
values, it's
right,
their values.
Right. And when you look at a character like Homeland is the perfect example of somebody who was raised in an environment that did not provide any kind of moral guidance for him, and his power was left to his own devices and left to the influence of other people. He was ripe for becoming a sociopath, basically.
He had no moral guidance, and I think he had no human tenderness. He had no human reflection. He didn't have the capacity to develop a sense of empathy for other people. But he
craves that, right? That's why he has such a crazy mommy complex. Mm-hmm. He wants
crazy mommy. I've never seen that either. That was crazy.
Right. That's a totally cool take on a superhero. The opposite of somebody like Clark Kent, who was raised in a Midwestern farm with a strong sense of who he was and a strong sense that his adopted parents, loved him and cared about him, and that gave him that base sense of self, as opposed to a Homelander who has no sense of self.
Yeah.
He was just a commodity, a thing that was being experimented on, and so that empty space in him, he can only fill with poll numbers and cheers and the supposed love of his fans, and that could be one of the dangers of celebrity. People gravitate towards a field wherein they can become famous because they're fractured psychologically, and then the fix of attention becomes something that they start to need. after a while, and that's the trap of celebrity that Homelander is definitely in. And they're sort of all in it in their own way,
Yeah,
trying
I liked
trying to stay on top. What's
Maeve's
that?
story. I liked Maeve's story, her celebrity with her, such a contrast between her private life and wanting to have a relationship, but how she just couldn't have a relationship based on the pressures that they were forcing her to be. And then once they realized she had come out of the closet, they just milk that for all it's worth. They're going to capitalize on it like
Well,
crazy.
yeah, and they outed her. She didn't come out of the, they forcibly, Homelander outed
That's
her.
right. And
Yeah.
she's like, then she's eating Pride bars and like they just commercial.
Oh, and they've set up a whole, like if you watch, they have this web series, The Boys, and they have, which one of the things I think that they do so well in this series is show both sides of celebrity by having them on set for their own movies and going through scripts. And the marketing guys are writing just like crazy stuff for them, and they, who are not only the superheroes but also they're the actors that have to play this, are like, this is just not right, and they're just getting told, no, sorry, you have to do it this way. I think one of the things they do so great is show that other side of it. And in this web series, that in between seasons, they've got this ongoing web series that they're like 7-8 minutes each, and it's all like a Fox News Channel review, and the ads as well. We'll be right back. We'll go to this commercial, and then there's a whole commercial about the new theme park. And you can go on the world's fastest roller coaster, that's Homelander. You can go into Maeve's Pride Parade. and then that's when, and now they're introducing Soldier Boy as well. I want to just pause to thank people for the super chats. We got a 20-pound super chat from Louise saying, welcome back. Yes, we're super glad to be back. And another one from Kiana Parker for $5. Glad you guys are back. And Allie has a comment for $5. It's a parody of superheroes, making fun of DC and Marvel. It's really how these heroes would act in real life and not how comics portray them. I agree with that. And
but it's also a swipe at idealism. It's a swipe at I heard one critic call shameless capitalism, as if capitalism leads to this kind of artifice naturally. What were you going to say? But I want to sort of hit on that topic. Does capitalism lead to shameless artifice? Does commercialism mean fake, phony, inauthentic? Or does it mean something else? Can we come up with other ways of looking at capitalism? Or is this very much in line with the types of jobs wherein people are trying to maintain images, more so than capitalism? Say the actor, or say the politician. It seems more in line with their interests than necessarily capitalists. But what were you going to say, Jax?
Oh, I was just going to make another comment that somebody on, I think it was Allie as well, made, and a couple other people have made a reference to The Boys kind of being a parallel of The Watchmen, or of Watchmen. And yeah, I watched that series. I watched the movie. I do kind of agree with it. It was, but I think the thing that's separate about The Boys is that really superheroes have, it's like the idealization of superheroes that this society has elevated the concept of super above just regular old human. And that's a problem that I have with, I love superhero movies, but the problem that I do have with them inherently is that it's almost like you're not good enough unless you have this kind of extra, imbued with this extra power. And just being human, just being a man or a woman is not enough for you to be considered on a higher level. In terms of the capitalism question, would you say that Hollywood is entirely capitalist?
Well, here's the sense I get from them. I get the sense when they talk about shameless capitalism and exploitation, they're often projecting. Um, they don't know other businesses so much. They know their own, and do misogynistic, chauvinistic, exploitative people operate in this in Hollywood? Oh, you bet they do. And do they try to retread old shows because they have a dearth of creativity and they want to capitalize on old profits, which is sort of cynical and cheap? Yeah, you bet they do. And yet they put those characteristics on anyone in the free market system,
Mhm.
and make the claim that the whole system is sort of rigged in that cheap and cynical way.
That if it weren't for the greed of money that capitalism somehow imbues you with, if it weren't for just a free dog eat dog environment, that you would not, I mean, we would be better people if we didn't have this full on an open grab at the cash, right? That's kind of the.
I would say that even, and here's where its commentary on celebrity comes in. I would say that, a grab for fame or popularity certainly lends itself to a sacrifice of integrity, but that's not imbued in a capitalist system, because
Right.
you create a value that people like and you advertise it as to attract people, and sometimes may exaggerate the characteristics of it, or drift into this sort of artificial territory. I don't think it's inherent in the system of capitalism. It's certainly inherent in the desire for power and fame that you will lose integrity in order to get it. It's not necessarily so for capitalism, where you're simply trying to produce something of value. Of
Right.
course, that makes you rich and makes you happy, but it also has the side effect of doing the same for others.
I think this show it speaks more about corporatism than capitalism, because they are very much in lock-sync with the military. And there's the whole creating of the terrorists so that the military has somebody to go after. Like, this is about the government and big corporations working really closely together.
But this is what people think capitalism is.
But they're wrong.
People think capitalism is a state corporation, or a fascist type state, right? Where corporations in their mind control the government. Now, that's a little confusing to me, since I thought people with guns had control. If you have the money, you pay the people with guns who actually have the control. But in the minds of many people in Hollywood, a corporate state is capitalism.
And so often they are confusing cronyism for capitalism.
They're confusing cronyism with capitalism, corporate statism, fascism with capitalism. Look, the conservatives who are supposed to be conserving traditions of classical liberalism and free market capitalism have done nothing of the kind. And so it's largely the conservatives' fault for linking any of these institutions with religion, which is justly criticized, I think, in this piece, as being not only a kind of subterfuge, but also a front for deeper political ends and social ends that are sort of dangerous. And it's
even got Scientology vibes when you have the celebrities sitting in that mansion. That was very much like Scientology and Tom Cruise.
Oh, I definitely think there's the collective, the spiritual collective that the Deep is trying to get into, only to revitalize his career, not to change his soul, not to shift his premises, or try to make himself actually a better human being, but to try to get into back into the seven. That does smack very much of the Church of Scientology, which apparently had lots of secrets on people within the church, and was one of the reasons that some of the big hitters, the John Travoltas, the Tom Cruises, don't say anything against the church because of all the dirt they have on you that they could throw out there in the world, which was about to happen in the last episode of season 2, when our surprise stealth superhero politician exploded the high priest's head, or whatever his name was.
Was that season 1 or season?
I think it's a play on Christianity, religious conservatism, and the fake jingoism that is linked to that. Excuse me. And probably the Search of Scientology that plays on these celebrities' weaknesses and abuses their stature and connections to make themselves more powerful.
Speaking of collectivism, there is an element to Butcher that I think is interesting to look at in terms of, so we see kind of the boys as like these kind of, cowboys that are individualist cowboys who are out to expose the soups and Vought for what they really are. And they use, many different means. But Butcher has an interesting take, because Butcher has been so deeply hurt, him personally, by soups with what Homelander did to his wife, and so he has a blanket hatred for all soups. So in his world, you can't be a good person if you're a soup. And I like that, because it's the reverse collectivist. Butcher needs to grow from that. And what I really like about Huey's character is that he is able to, he is one who tends to judge people more, based on their own individual merits. So, and that's what allows him to see Annie as such a good person. It doesn't matter if even though A-Train literally ran through Huey's girlfriend, he did not develop a hatred for all soups. And that happened in front of him.
Yeah, I remember Mother's Milk, when he was talking about Huey to Billy, said, he's your canary. Mm-hmm. Right, the canary in the coal mine that lets you know that there's that canary is what lets you know that you're in the realm of safety if it's still alive. Don't kill your canary, because then you have no moral barometer. But yeah, there's certainly enough people around Billy Butcher now, with Starlight and Maeve and Kimiko, and the influence of Huey, who now understands he bears a resemblance to Billy Butcher's brother, and I think feels an even deeper sense of love for him, and knows now that Billy has that transference with him. I think all of that stuff is going to certainly change him in the future.
So we have another super chat from Allie. The 7 were more concerned about how much merchandise they've sold over saving people. Starlight broke through that part of avarice, and I do not know that word. I'm sorry.
Part of what?
Avarice. 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 I don't know what that word means.
Like greed. It's like greed.
Okay. So that's interesting. Thank you, Allie, for $5. The 7 were more concerned about how much merchandise they've sold. I don't know if it was as much the 7 as it is Vought. Some of the 7 are interested in that, but I think that, I think A-Train probably, I could see A-Train, because he to me is more like instead of just like a celebrity. We were talking about this the other day, instead of an analogy for a celebrity, I think A-Train is more an analogy for a professional athlete. And athletes, of course, always want to, that's how you get rich, is you sell merchandise and, you get sponsored and stuff. But Homelander, I don't think he is concerned with what he sells. I think he just wants to be powerful. He just wants to be the top guy. And he really, really needs people to see him as a good person.
Yeah. So he's a tyrant.
Yeah.
He's a budding tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
And not even so much budding. By the time season 2 is done, we see him whacking off over the Chrysler building and saying he can do anything he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a Nero or a Caligula being born here. And the fact that he does have the powers of a god makes him really, really dangerous. And again, I think distinctions have to be made here that aren't necessarily made, because capitalism becomes the victim of in this story, in a way, in this story of power, lust, and greed, as if capitalism is what promotes that and makes that happen, as opposed to the things that are really making it happen: psychopathy, derangement, power lust,
Basic values.
and a union with not only limitless power in his own right, so that it's hard for him to be checked by anybody, but a deliberate union with the government.
Mhm.
A complete and total lack of values and philosophy.
Yeah, but we have to be careful because I don't think that the boys are explicitly carrying the torch of principles and individualism and
I
capitalism.
think they have to be explicitly carrying them. I think they are in their actions, and that they're fighting palpably evil people.
They're lawless and they're taking the law in their own hands, which is not what we're about. So,
Well,
I mean,
in a world where the law is commanded by these types of individuals, you have no choice but to take the law in your hand, into your hands.
So
Because
they're the boys, in my view, are fighting for the real, the real thing behind truth, justice, and the American way. They're the ones that they are fighting for what America is fundamentally about: individualism and rights. They may not be explicit about it, but in their actions, they certainly are.
And it's the little guy against the indomitable, massive state. I mean, that's America was born in that tradition. A bunch of ragtag
America was born
against a superpower.
They were carrying the flag of the principles, or at least it ended that way. I don't see.
They were doing it explicitly, but I think these guys are doing it implicitly.
They don't like something, so they're going to revolt against. We have to be careful because that's anarchy, right?
Well, it's not that they just don't like it. They see murder and graft and mayhem.
And they are murdering too.
They're murdering murderers. They're killing murderers who are murdering with impunity and getting away with it.
Why we have a nation of laws, and we have to fight for that, not gain.
Which we see how far that gets when the council chamber organizes to try to deal with Vought, and heads explode all over the place. We're in a situation outside of the law.
So it's a revolution.
Pardon?
It's a revolution then.
Oh, they're already around the world murdering people everywhere. I mean, and not even with the consent of a Congress, but
this is when it makes sense.
They're rogue, and they're a rogue group of individuals protected by, well, so far I think they seem to be protected by Vought, and the government seems to be in a position where they're on the fence, all about to go with it, and also not. So the government is still not entirely the bad guy here. The corporation, the pharmaceutical company, is the bad guy.
It will remain to be. It'll be interesting to see what season 3 brings, if it's going to have a closer union between the government and Vought, because what that then turns into is the need for a militia. That's when it kind of does become a revolution, because you've got the government that is in on the superheroes and the super terrorists. A really interesting question, guys, that's along the same lines that was a super chat from Louise. What would it, for £5, thank you, what would a good portrayal of capitalism look like in a show like The Boys?
I mean, I think the company, well, it wouldn't be the villain, number one. It would likely be the thing trying to produce the solution to the problem. You could say that, the government produced this, serum that gave people these superpowers with the intention of using them as weapons against rival nations, and these things have gone rogue.
Why couldn't a corporation have produced that, though? What would be so bad about a corporation partner?
Well, there's nothing wrong on the face of it with a corporation producing a serum that can make people have superpowers. In fact, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But in our world here, it's a corporation that was, one, founded by a Nazi, too, with the intent of creating the Ubermensch, so with the long-term political goal of establishing fascism around the world. So in our particular world, it's an industry linked with all this evil stuff. And I think people tend to link capitalism and free markets in their minds with this kind of evil shit, just in general. You know, if it's a free market, if it's a free corporation, well, it's just going for profits. It's just going for the bottom line. It doesn't care about human beings. It's just a mechanical thing.
Unlike communism, which totally cares about human beings.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we've never seen anything.
So in my mind, the corporation, rather than just individuals on their own and their own inventiveness, MacGyver-esque inventiveness like Frenchie has, would be figuring out an antidote to this, or figuring out some way to counter the soups, because the soups would be creatures of the state. And even if they would work, you know, experiments from a free market system, and they decided to go rogue, you know, I don't think the corporation would have it in its interest to pretend like this wasn't something they needed to get behind cleaning up, cooperate with the government. So yeah, I mean, does that make that clear, Lou? I mean, they would be the solution rather than the problem, and they're always the problem.
Yeah, they're always the ones that are just screwing everything up and making it all worse. And what would a Vought, what is the rational version of Vought? It's an interesting question.
I mean, it's a longevity.
Definitely not creating the terrorist to create the illusion. That's right. That's not honesty. The illusion that there's these foe that we have to fight out there. That's a conspiracy theory, but yeah, that would definitely not be something a capitalist company would do.
And, you know, and I wonder if a capitalist company, well, it's interesting. So we talk about capitalism, but
we're talking about capitalism in a framework where nobody really understands what we're talking about. You're saying a free market wouldn't, you know, patronize some, you know, disgusting, villainous tyrant because they pay. And you see companies all the time going over to places that are have suspicious governments and do terrible things to their people in order to keep their profits going. That's a difficult thing to explain to people, and it's a difficult thing not to associate with quote unquote capitalism. So,
yeah, and one of the more interesting examples of that is what companies like Cisco and Google have done for China, for their software, for their firewall software, in order for China to continue to oppress its people. By giving them software programs and firewall programs that can detect anybody typing in the word Tiananmen Square or independence, and then you get a cop showing up at your knocking on your door asking you why you typed that. I mean, it's you know,
yeah, that's evil. That's evil. And the capitalist world, the free market, has both. And the job of the government is to take the criminals and put them away, and to let those who, you know, make rational choices and live in the market rationally, let them live as they live and trade as they trade. So unfortunately, both are possible in a capitalist world. Both are possible. It's just that it seems like primarily people associate the one entirely with capitalism, whereas in a socialist or communist system, it's all criminality.
Yeah,
not just some criminality or people on the fringes, and because it's free and people can make up their own minds. In their minds, a socialist system is somehow good, even though it's entirely criminal.
And in a real true capitalist economy, you would have the freedom and the ability to either be good or bad, right? To make good, or you would have that freedom to make shitty bad moral choices that hurt other people. And in the same society, you would be held responsible for that. You would be legally held responsible for that if you infringed on somebody else's rights. In a communist society, or in even a socialist society, those criminals can thrive. I think in a capitalist society, they would not be able to thrive in the way that they are able to thrive in a communist or a socialist society.
They can't thrive without government help. That's for sure. It's harder to thrive when your reputation is really on the line than if you have the government creating privileges for you, or putting you above and outside the law and the market in a way that only government can. So I don't know if that answers.
I'm going to make one more. I want to kind of change the topic. But one more super chat from Rat Lover, love that name, for £5. This is in regards to what I was saying earlier about fighting for truth, justice in the American way. He said they are fighting for justice in America. I agree. At least that's what they're trying to do, meaning the boys, but they're sometimes irrational, at least sometimes. And yeah, I agree. That they are, that sometimes they make the wrong decisions. But what I wanted to, which we hadn't talked about earlier on our call, is what kind of elements do you like in the boys? What kind of writing, directing, visual elements, audio, like artistic, what do you guys like about that? And what's interesting or unique about it?
Well, I think the acting is very strong across the board. Everybody's very good. Everybody's voice is very distinct. Sometimes when people write, the characters all sound the same, or they say the same phrases, and you can tell that that's coming out of one writer. When several different characters say the same type of thing, that's sort of a no-no in my opinion. And I don't see the characters doing that. Each has a distinct voice, and that is great. That's great writing. I love the stories behind each of the characters, because even the most villainous ones, you have a degree of sympathy for. Homelander is nothing less than a tyrant, and he's a psychopath, but you see how he was brought up with nothing, no nurturing, no parental love, just having to deal with superpowers as an infant and growing into manhood. I can't even imagine how difficult that was. Every single person has a story that makes them sympathetic.
Totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I think that's why you could take this genre that I'm normally not much, and I enjoyed it because of the character development, the time that the writers took to make sure that we not only had a backstory and a motivation of each of where they're coming from and unique to them, and their conflicts were pitted against each other, which is great, but they introduced it slowly to us so that weren't like bombarded with it. So like you get introduced to Huey and Starlight in the first episode, and then you meet the Billy Butcher guy, and then you meet Frenchie on a third episode, and then you meet Mother's Milk, and slowly you get to know who the boys are, and so you get to learn about each and care about them and have empathy, and even the bad guys. So I totally agree with that. I think that was really good writing, especially in the first season. It got a little messy and sloppy for me in the second season, but for the first season, it was spot on.
Does anybody care about the Deep?
I was just going to talk about the Deep, because his moment of empathy came when he got Me Too'd, basically.
Yeah.
And when he was banished to Ohio, and the girl, he brings a girl back to his house, back to his apartment, whatever, and she sticks her fingers in his gills, and it's against his will. I mean, and it was funny because I was watching it again with my daughter, and we just watched that episode again, and she was like, "Yeah, see what it feels like," But that was, That
Is
was
there
him.
anything, is there anything about his character that makes him likable, even though he's a date rapist and he's disgusting, a misogynist, a guy who takes advantage of his celebrity, a
It's
complete tool.
he has, I love his love for animals. I love his love for wildlife, and it's just, it's so, every time he tries to save them he ends up killing them, which I think is hilarious. But like, he truly has a love for that, unlike Homelander, where you don't even know if he loved, like, I don't even think he loves his son. And he just,
No.
the deep is, he has a love for life and for preservation, which I don't see that, that's an empathetic aspect to him. Ellie asked for $10. We're getting lots of super chats today, so thanks everybody. I guess you guys missed us. Ellie said, "This is great commentary. What do you think of Homelander's portrayal of evil?" Evil.
I love it.
It was sophisticated. Like, there were moments of vulnerability, and yet then he turns and he like grabs Liberty. I forgot Liberty's other name, by the neck, like, and then the psychopath.
Stormfront. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I love about it is it's weak. It's exactly what it's exactly what you would expect of evil from an objectivist perspective. He's caught in the oral stage of psychosexual development. And they dramatize it by his obsession with breast milk and what that does for him. He's 3 years old emotionally and psychologically. That's a weak human being, which
and that's
makes
somebody
him,
you can beat.
oh yeah, you can beat. But he's extremely dangerous, because he's essentially a 3-year-old in a superhero's body and capable of anything, literally anything. So yeah, I love the portrayal of the villain as the weak man, because he has nothing that one could lay a foundation of strength upon. He has no values other than fame and love, adulation, praise. He has no character, because he's destroyed that in every single act. Every time he lies, every time he manipulates, every time he kills heartlessly, he loses self-esteem. So even though he came into this with very little and maldevelopment, completely twisted up, the more he acts badly in the world, the more he proves to himself how evil he is. The more he tries to hide it, the worse of a trap he sets for himself. So it's brilliantly done. It's brilliantly done. That is a villain. Weak,
Amen.
pathetic, this sick, twisted, really
but power enough to do some serious damage.
Yeah, incapable really of living a real life, but quite capable in the time that they're around of hurting a lot of people.
Yep, that's great. I agree. Do we have a nihilist in the 7? If there was a nihilist?
I mean, sure. I don't. Maybe Noir as a nihilist.
I was thinking of Noir as kind of a nihilist. Like, I don't see Noir as somebody who cares anything about. He doesn't seem to care so much about celebrity, about what other people think of him. He, to me, is just somebody who wants to just destroy shit.
Yeah, he's a blank. He's a cipher. He has nothing. He's probably the emptiest of them all. Noir fits him perfectly. And the other guys are sort of, as you said, A-Train is very much the professional athlete trying to stay on top and sacrificing his integrity in order to do that. And the Deep is just a shallow sexual abuser or sex addict with tons of issues and not a lot going on upstairs. And he's just looking to stay in celebrity, in the comfort of celebrity. Who else is in this damn the 7? There was Translucent. Oh, sorry, translucent. That's right, translucent.
That was always showing up naked.
Oh, he's just yeah, he had no boundaries and would abuse the fact that he was invisible to
Yeah.
leer at people, which is just off. Um, and did we get much into his personality? He had a kid, he had a life, he wanted to bring home the bread and onions, but in the end, he was a creepy dude who got invisible and exploited people when he was invisible.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a kid, I think, to make Huey feel guilty about what he did to him. And that kind of like just blipped for me, just because when you make a choice to be a bad person, you can have plenty of bad people have kids, and you can, but you're making those choices to hurt others and to to be a bad person.
Well,
So
that's how these
Huey's,
what's that?
it was good. I think it was good. It was good conflict, internal conflict for Huey because he killed somebody, right? And regardless of whether he was a good or bad person, he took it in his own hands to kill him.
Yeah, and that's how these pathotypes take advantage of quote unquote normal people or people with a conscience.
Yeah.
By throwing out things like that because they don't play by the same rules as you. And I highly doubt that if he got outside, he would have respected Huey for 1 second. Once he was free, I think he would have been just as nihilistic and murderous as everybody else in the Seven is.
One of the other things that I love so much about The Boys is the elements of humor. And it's like there's just like massive gore and then hilarious like comic relief after that. I think it was so funny that first Haley Joel Osment was Mesmer, right? He was a child star himself. And I think that's great that they brought that in. And then there were like two appearances by Billy Zane where he's showing up like
he's at the cons. He's at the convention.
At a convention, and then in the movie with Popclaw, I think, it just so it's this real interesting blend of like real life and fiction, real life celebrity, right?
It surely is the dark side of celebrity. That is the bad part of it. If you take it seriously, it can fucking kill you. So the moral of that story is don't take it seriously. Just don't take it seriously. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And you just have to know that. Then that's what none of these folks in the Seven really understand. They're trying to keep something they can't keep. Anyway,
so looking forward to season 3, where Soldier Boy comes in. What'd you say, Jennifer?
When is that coming out?
I think next year. They're already starting to do kind of like drop little mini trailers and stuff about it. I don't know. Why don't you call up your former co-star Mark and ask when it's coming out?
I'll do it. But he was on the set of Rust, not American Rust, but the Western Rust, when that tragedy happened with Alec Baldwin. So
yeah,
that's what he was working on last time I saw him. So I just hope he's doing okay. Maybe I'll send a shout out to him and see when the third season is going to start, because I'm addicted to this show. It is a great show. Kudos to Eric Kripke, not just because he created Supernatural and that's a dynasty, but he created this great piece. For me, there's not a weak link in it. I mean, we could talk about all the social dynamics and critique of America and capitalism and all that stuff, but much of it is much of it needs to be, much of that, the right side of things, it needs to be critiqued, and I'm okay with it. We may think there's too much of it because we see one side sort of dominating the conversation, one side getting beaten down a little bit more, but what they say about the union of and hypocrisy of religion and government, and the union of corporations and states are true. They are very corrupt, and as can celebrity be as well, a very corrupt mode of living. if you
Well,
let it affect you.
these shows like this are really good for us to watch as we're working on the strike, because it shows us what the world kind of thinks, or at least what Hollywood thinks of corporate America and capitalism, and it gives us that much more insight and power, in a good way, to really create entities that are truly capitalist, and that are and create heroes that are grounded in values and morality. So it's a great example of a show to watch, to see like what the perception is, and then to be able to kind of go in there and try and
change the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And it shows also Ayn Rand was right. Ideas rule the world. And Superman had a particular set of ideas that led him to noble acts. Homelander is a nihilist and a psychopath with no ideal but himself as the top dog being praised by everyone. And that leads him to do psychopathic things. So yes, remember folks, as we sort of sign out here, we're gonna end on some strike notes. The ideas run the earth, and values rule the humans. So now, before we conclude here, you guys wanted to say something about the strike. So go ahead and talk away. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, first we wanted to, so we've made some, I'm going to save the announcement for the show that we're doing. We are, if everybody can put in their calendar, December 4th, Mark, Jennifer, and I are going to be doing a panel on Ayn Rand Con for Ayn Rand Center Latin America. And we will have more of an announcement for the strike, but the teaser, I guess, to that is that we have partnered with somebody who has the means, ability, and connections to be able to get this show made. So
Yay!
Yay!
So I can't wait to tune in. I'll be there, but for everybody else, I hope you can't wait to tune in on December 4th to listen to this talk. It's going to be good. Do you remember the time?
December 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific time.
9 a.m. Pacific. It's a little early for you folks on the East Coast, but come on in, join the conversation. Listen to what we have to say. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I think.
And thank you to Bernardo Fuentes for, I don't know what MX $ is, $19 of something, but thank you.
Mexico money?
So maybe MX, duh.
All right, folks. Well, maybe can we continue this? Do we continue this on Clubhouse? Is that what's going to happen?
Why don't we tell everybody what and when our next TV talk show is going to be?
Why don't you do that? Because you know that better than me.
Okay, the win of it is December 3rd is our next show. So that will be Friday, December 3rd. And we will be talking about
Drum roll.
Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Midnight Mass.
Limited series, so you'll have plenty of time to watch it.
Yeah.
Midnight Mass. What is it? 7 episodes?
Somewhere, something like that. Yeah, it's very doable.
Yeah. Yeah. So
by I think the great horror director Mike Flanagan, who also did Hush and Gerald's Game. If you want to watch those two films as well, and make the commentary about that, or the Clubhouse afterwards about that, that's great. I will be talking about Midnight Mass from my perspective and from my wife's, because she had a very, very strong perspective about this show. And I want to see from your guys' point of view.
Provokes a strong reaction.
Does it? Yeah.
Well, maybe your wife should guest star on this.
Yeah.
No. That wouldn't work.
We want to keep the union between Mark and Tracy.
Well, yeah, it's just you have two alphas in here in a way that it will lead to conflict. But anyway, guys, okay, so now we're going to head over to Clubhouse, right?
Yep.
All right, so folks, thanks for watching TV Talk, brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. Head over to Clubhouse now if you want to keep up the discussion. There's tons of things we missed because the show is very complex, has a lot going on. The thematic elements are really, really strong, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about it. So join us on Clubhouse. This is Mark Pellegrino and Jax Schumann and Jennifer Bouani signing off until the 3rd.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.